Hey everybody, Garcia here, and today we're taking a look at some extra content for the wonderful Endeavor Age of Sail here. This is Endeavor Age of Expansion. In this box, you are going to get a few things that are basically modular. You can choose to add it all in or just some parts of it. You can mix and match with some of the original content in the game. I'm not going to be explaining how to play Endeavor. I'm hoping if you are interested in the expansion, you already know how to play that. But if you are not and you or don't know how to play, then you're going to want to check out one of our other videos to see a review of that game, okay? So that you know what I'm talking about here when I just show pieces out of context in this box, all right? But if you're good to go, you want to know what's in here, you're curious if this is something you might want to pick up for yourself, then you're in the right place. Let's dive in. This expansion is made up of basically 3 parts, and you can choose to use them in whatever combination you want to. You can choose to throw in all 3 things. You can just replace one aspect from the original game, however you want to do it. And the 3 things are new asset cards, new buildings, and then this new idea over here called the prominence tiles, okay? So we're going to start with the cards. The first thing you get here is a brand new set of asset cards with which to replace the entirety, pretty much, of the original cards. You just remove all these, put all these new ones into play. They're going to give you new abilities, new concepts. So you have a new Europe deck, one for each of the other regions, okay? And there's going to be a few commonalities among the different piles, much like in the original deck, right? So, for example, the first card in the other decks was whatever it would give you, but also you would get a new disc, right? And one new action, basically, that you could use. Well, now the number ones all do this, where you can attach another card to them, and it doesn't count against your card limit. This encourages a lot more cards in the game, and a lot of these buildings, a lot of these cards will just generate more card draw. So this game gets bigger faster, and there will be more going on at the end of the game. The second one is the same as well for all of the regions, and it lets you take a payment action in the middle of a turn. When you draft this card, boom, you get a payment action only for that type of ability, though. So again, it generates more abilities, more actions, more to do. And then the 5th card in each deck is going to be completely unique. It's going to have some sort of ability, usually a somewhat historic ability, perhaps, you know, tying to something that happened in history for each of the regions. The Europe deck, by the way, is going to have all new cards that are a little more thematic. They have sort of, you know, again, historical events that happen as you are triggering them. So let me find those and show you what I'm talking about here. So the first one is going to allow you to take, treat as an extra governor spot. You can put another governor card here. Again, card growth, right? But all the other ones after that are about new historical things. So Secession and the Great Plague would be that one. And then this is a marriage alliance, and things are happening along the way, basically. The same number 5 ability, but again with more going on. So pretty cool, a little more historical, a little more flavor driven from these cards there. So there you go. Second thing, buildings. All new buildings that you can choose to play. You should not mix the original buildings with the new buildings. You can play with all the new ones or all the original ones, okay? You are going to get another tray with all of the new buildings, but the really cool part about this is that you don't need to keep both trays. You can just keep the original one with all the new buildings, because on the backs of all of these are the original buildings printed there for you. So if you want to play with the original set, you just flip all of these over and you're good to go. If you want to play with the new ones, you just flip them to the other side and you're good to go. The only tricky part is you have to make sure when you are shuffling the 5s that you just look away while you do so, because you'll have the original ones on one side, the original ones here on this side and the new ones on the other. So you just look away while you're picking your 3, okay? But that's pretty much all there is to it, and it's really cool. I like this a lot because you just keep the one tray and you've got all the new buildings and the old buildings. Big fan of this. Now the new ones, what do they do? Again, it's a little bit about Well, like the title says, expansion. You're expanding a little more quickly. You are doing ultimately more things. So there's a couple of new abilities in there, and I'll explain two of them. So this one over here lets you put one of your discs there every time you are gathering new discs, and you can choose to spend it from there to add this onto another one of your abilities. So for example, let's say I have this one, and after I sail and draw a card, I could use this disc, remove it from here, and do another sailing action with that very disc. That's the one that's going to go out, okay? And then at the beginning of my next turn, or the next round, I should say, if this is empty while I'm gathering new discs, one goes on there. The other ability is this one here. That's pretty cool. That lets you, if you have some of these tokens out, let's say, that these things are out there on the board, I can choose to place one of my discs there and then swap one that I already have, let's say I already had this one, with one that's out on the board. So I can take this, put that. I'll drop that track by one, but now I have this disc, right? I have a new ability. And you can do that with any two you want to. One you own, one that you don't, that's out on the board. Pretty cool. Not something you're going to do all the time, but it's going to get you out of a jam sometimes. It's going to open up an ability you were thinking, oh, I'm not going to be able to do this thing this turn. Well, you might be able to with that. So I like that quite a bit. And then lastly, the prominence tiles, which are, I would say, the least sort of engaging part of the whole experience, but it is the main new idea in the game. You're going to put these into play, one of them anyway. You put it on the correct side for the number of players. And then you can choose to take the printed action on there to deploy one of your discs there, and it'll give you some ability, some victory points, having the most there and the second most at the end of the game. Also, more discs, more abilities. There's 4 of these. These 2 on the back have the same thing, but for fewer players. So you've got that military buildup and this naval superiority, same thing. And then this one is different on both sides. So you've got that one, the changing alliances, and on this side, political agenda. So there you go. This one's pretty cool. This is probably my favorite one, where you send a disc there with a draw action, where you don't draw. You just instead put the disc there. And at the end of the game, let's say I have one here, the matching track on my player board, when I'm scoring, I will not slide that back until I find a symbol. I'll leave it where it is and score that. So if I made it all the way up to, let's say, 18, instead of sliding back to 15 when I score, I'll get the 18 points if I'm occupying this spot. So pretty cool. I like that. And that's pretty much all there is to it. Again, this is a little bit of a variant, kind of, whereas the other ones sort of rewrite the game. These two feel like they rewrite the game. This one feels like a modification, So there you go. That should give you an idea of what you're going to get in the box, what's coming in here, and how the game should feel a little bit. But let me give you some final thoughts. Let's go back up top, and I'll tell you what I think of it. This is a very interesting expansion. It's one that I say feels really engaging and vital for those of you that enjoy the game. But I also would say it's not one you need to own. It's not one that's going to change anyone's mind about whether they liked the game in the first place. It's one that you might play and think, that's it. It just sort of changes the flavor a little bit of the game, okay? So hopefully seeing the changes in the overview and what I'm going to tell you now is enough for you to decide if this is something you want, something you don't need. But again, I don't think it's going to change anyone's mind as to whether they liked the game or not. I really enjoy it, but I liked the game originally. So here's where I am with it. The theme is a big plus over the original game, okay? And that is because there's more of a historical flavor in the game now. There are more distinct cards. They have historical concepts, we'll say, or events, which they bring into play when they are acquired. It's still abstracted, fairly abstracted, but they're there, and they're named things, and they help to add to the ambiance of the entire thing. The cards in this game, a lot of the concepts in the game actually feel like the designer, the designer of this is one of the 2 original designers for Endeavor. It feels like the designer basically went, okay, game came out, okay? Game got reprinted the way people remember it. Now I'm going to redo it. What would I do if I was making this game again now? That's what a lot of this expansion feels like, you know? The cards are more thematic. The buildings are a little wilder and splashier. There's more stuff. You build up more. There's, you know, more whiz-bang kind of stuff. And definitely the cards are, I think, the biggest driving factor towards that. The aesthetics here, same as the original game, real clean look. I like the aesthetic in this game a lot. And the greatest part is, I think, the fact that they included the old original buildings on the back of the new buildings. Brilliant. Love it. That means you only have to keep the one tray and just flip them over if you want to play one version or the other. That's truly appreciated, I think. So really wonderful stuff. The replay value here is good. There's a lot of permutations, right? A lot of combinations that you can choose to go with. By that same token, the game, I think, to someone who doesn't dive deep into it, is going to feel like more of the same. I think anybody who is not that invested in the game, anyone who hasn't played it a lot, anyone who only gives it sort of a cursory play when they do, isn't going to feel like this was something that is so distinct it was worth making, maybe. By that, I mean, ultimately, this is an expansion that rewards people who are big fans of the game. People who have played it a good amount. People who know the game, who know what the next card coming up in that deck is without picking it up and looking at it, right? Those people are going to get the absolute most out of this expansion. They're going to feel like they're relearning, not the game, but the strategies, right? If you haven't crossed that threshold yet, this is going to be less rewarding for you, I guess is what I'm saying, okay? So just be aware of that. I like it. I wouldn't say I'm there. You know, I wouldn't say I've, like, learned the game, how to, you know, just trounce at it, but I enjoy the expansion anyway. I really enjoy having it. I like the variability. I guess that's part of it, too. Next up, the arc, game arc. Big buildups. Big reversals of fortune, big splashy moments. I've already said it. That's where it's at, and I really like that. I think it's great. The ease of play here is really interesting because you're learning very little. This is an expansion that requires you to learn new concepts. As far as new concepts go, very few of them. You're just learning a couple of new symbols, really. So, again, kind of interesting. Are people going to play this and go, well, that's just more of the same? It's like, what kind of attachment is that? What kind of expansion is that? You know, whereas there are people out there who are going to look at it and go, this is great. I basically have to learn almost nothing new. And yet the game feels different. I think that distinction is going to come from how much experience with the game that person has. And then lastly, tactics and strategy and luck. This game has very little luck. Basically nothing past setup luck. And there's plenty to think about. Again, especially if you learn the expansion, if you know what card is the 5th card in the North America deck, in the India deck, you know, because then you can manipulate the story. You can manipulate the big events that happen, right? And that's neat. This is going to be a very rewarding expansion to those of you who've just wanted more from Endeavor, people who had a lot of fervor for the reprint, right? The reprint of this to come out from the original Endeavor. So it's really cool to see this come out, to see an expansion that doesn't feel the need to rewrite what you did in the original one, and yet at its very core is exactly what it does. It rewrites the very essence of the game. It guts the original one and replaces those parts with modern feeling substitutions. It's fascinating in a way that it feels so distinct yet so samey. I like it. I like it a lot. I think if you are a big fan of the expansion of Endeavor Age of Sail, I think you're going to be a big fan of this expansion as well. I certainly recommend it. So this is going to get an 8 out of 10 from me, which is a big seal of approval. Like I said, Age of Expansion here is not just a clever title, but it is indicative of what comes in the box. A lot of growth in your empire, expanding, big cards, big buildings, big splashy moments. You're going to get them in here. So there you go, everybody. Again, seal of approval from me. I'm Z Garcia. I'll see you in the next one.